National Taxi Council is appealing to commuters not to carry excess luggage. This is to avoid overloading, which might be dangerous to taxis travelling on the road. Joining us is Mmatshikhidi Phala, Santaco national spokesperson. Thank you so much for joining us and compliments of the season.
Hi, thanks very much, and to your viewers, compliments to you as well.
Critical conversation, and your suggestion obviously is for commuters not to carry huge amounts of luggage. How can this be averted and how can it be avoided?
So I think the idea really is for people to capitalize on the reality that even if you go into the villages, you've got some of these chain supermarkets and all these other big retailers where you can still be able to access some of the things that you would have preferred to travel with from provinces like Gauteng. The messaging that we're trying to send out, one is we want for everyone to sit comfortably in the vehicles. I think perhaps that should also be the idea with which then people are guided in terms of how they should be traveling and the amount of luggage that they should carry. But also the reason why we're sending out this cautionary message as opposed to just automatically saying people will pay for any additional luggage is because we know that majority of the people that use taxi industry services are people who can only afford to a certain extent in terms of fares. Hence, we're just asking them to work with us and meet us halfway.
Mmatshikhidi, so the question though is that isn't this information coming a little too late? Because if I was told 4 months ago, right, that I would pay extra or that the advice is to carry minimal amount of luggage or baggage when I travel, right, then I potentially would have made a provision. But if I'm traveling to Durban tomorrow and all of a sudden I'm told I have to pay extra and this wasn't part of the conversation, is that not unfair?
Two things. The messaging is not coming for the first time now. If anything, it's just to remind everyone each and every time, really, when we communicate on varied platforms, we always urge South Africans to travel light, but also people who use taxi services on a daily know the sizing of the vehicles and they know to what an extent you will be able to sit comfortably with extra luggage. I think if anything, it's us just reminding them also because we've been receiving a lot of concern from some of our road safety champions as well as law enforcement people who are saying that the taxi industry still seems to be accommodating people who are carrying large luggages. And then in terms of the issue of the possibility of pay, so we are not necessarily saying that when you do come with extra luggage, you will have to pay. It's not a standard practice currently in the taxi industry. It happens in some instances, but it's not all across. So if anything, it's just a caution to say, if it persists in the way that it is, we may have to consider additional pricing so that people still travel safely with their luggage, all the while sitting comfortably and not disadvantaging the next commuter. So it's not necessarily coming for the first time, and also the costings and the possibility thereof, if anything, it's just a caution more than anything.
So what are the implications of overloading and huge amounts of baggage or luggage being carried on the commuters?
Sure. Look, for starters, you don't sit comfortably, and we're talking largely about people who are traveling long distances, be it that you're leaving from Johannesburg to Durban, Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and similar sort of trips. So you don't sit comfortably, but also should it happen that there is an accident, which obviously we are discouraging and we're also urging our drivers to be cautious of, but we know that such instances happen. Should it be that there is an accident, we have been reliably informed even by those who work in law enforcement that as and when it is found, the luggages also add on to the pressure that is exerted on people in the vehicles, sometimes even harming people in the process because it's varied forms of things that are carried in these vehicles. But also, when a car is overloaded, it becomes not ideal for it to be on the road. So when it is stopped by law enforcement, the possibilities of the car being impounded are very high because it endangers the lives of those that are in the vehicle, but also it isn't allowed in terms of the law for vehicles to be overloaded and traveling with people on the road.
So during this season, it's not just the RTMC, SAPS, there are multiple enforcement agencies that are trying to ensure that drivers on South African roads adhere to the laws of the land or the rules of the road, if you will. What conversation are you having with your membership and drivers in particular to ensure adherence?
Sure, look, we've got what we call our Tlhokomela Road Safety and Customer Service campaign. It runs throughout the year, and the messaging there is one asking our drivers to be cautious on the roads and for them to always be vigilant and when tired to rest and to communicate effectively with the people that are in their vehicles. In extension, we've also drawn up and facilitated joint ventures between our long distance and our short distance taxi associations, where because of a time like this, where it's very busy, we're urging them to get into agreements where one car, if it's going to make more than 2 or 1 trip a day, has got more than one driver, so as to ensure that one person does not drive too much and end up being in an accident. And one of the other achievements that we've been able to do in some of the conversations, as you've asked, is we've been able to talk to the vehicle manufacturers. And to date, we now have got just almost all the minibuses, especially, coming with a speed reduction that does not surpass 100 kilometers per hour. That has really assisted in terms of ensuring that our drivers also know that there is absolutely no way that they can overspeed. But also in terms of the conversations that we're having with our drivers, we're working very closely with the Transport Education Training Authority, TETA, throughout the year. And what they do is they give training to our drivers, especially in terms of issues inclusive of customer service, issues inclusive of first aid in some instances, to say if you've got a commuter who needs help, what do you do as you wait for the emergency services? The particular aspect of training is not going at a pace that we would regard as ideal to this point, but we are working hard to continue to harness it. In places where it started happening, we're seeing considerable efforts and changes.
Final question is, are you keeping stats on the involvement of minibuses in accidents? I can give you two or three incidents. My colleague Nsigino here, just outside Umtata yesterday, a minibus driver who confirmed that he was in the wrong. 7 people died in Limpopo in the early hours of yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Another minibus involved. Obviously not sure whether the minibus driver was in the wrong in that instance. But there are those stats, the number of accidents that we continue to report, many of those involving minibus drivers.
Sure, absolutely. Look, I think 2 things. Not every minibus is a taxi. And I think quite often when these statistics are being tallied up, that particular confusion gets to happen. But be that as it may, every life that's lost is one too many. And we don't necessarily want to boil it down to wanting to determine who is in the wrong and who isn't. So yes, there are instances where our drivers overspeed, they drive with fatigue. Hence, I've spoken about some of these initiatives that we've started to spearhead with hopes to give them some sense of relief. So we are obviously keeping up the stats. The accidents that have already happened in the Eastern Cape are 2. You'd remember there was the one that happened at Renet, and then there's the one that you just cited now, and what's happened in Limpopo. But look, when we compare to years back, there was a point where the taxi industry was contributing something over 40% of the accidents on the road. Now, when you look at the last statistics that were released, it was just around 0.6%, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to now sit back and relax. So we are keeping up the numbers, and we're also looking into those problematic areas that often record these accidents and hoping to find ways to really harness some of the training that we're doing, the awareness work with our drivers, so that they remember that they're carrying precious cargo and they can't afford to be involved in these accidents that then leave a number of families without their loved ones. So we're definitely very much aware.
Mmatshikhidi Phala, appreciate your time. Wish you safe holidays. Santaco National Spokesperson, speaking to us about the challenges and encouragements for those that are travelling on minibuses to carry as little luggage as possible. Travel light is what they're advocating.